Welcome to Stay a While and Listen.
Hello.
Hello?
Hello, Blizzcon! Hi, everyone. My name is Josh Whitke. I'm your host for Stay a While and Listen. I told you to wait in the truck. It's like the one joke you'll get out of me all night. Hi, welcome. I'm really excited to be here with Stay a While and Listen again. We did this for the first time last year. We realized, like, let me rewind. You enjoying BlizzCon? You've seen a lot of the deep dive, a lot of the behind the scenes, what's next panels, things like that. We realized a lot of BlizzCon focuses on those like behind the scenes, where we got to where we are in the game, how did Orphea become Orphea, because that's awesome. But what we realized was we're not telling, or we don't usually have the option or the opportunity to tell those same stories about those of us at Blizzard who have a really cool story of our own that's our own behind the scenes, our own sort of like history of our lives about how we made it up to where we are today, to be able to give you these shows that we give you and these games that we give you. And it's a lot of fun. And last year, who was at Stay a While and Listen last year? Yeah? Did you have a good time? Yeah? We're gonna have a good time again this year. Got 3 guests lined up for you. I'm really excited to bring them out. First up, I've got Project Director from our creative development team, Taryn Gregory.
Citizens of BlizzCon, how are we doing? Excellent. BlizzCon is a special place. 13 years ago, some individuals at Blizzard got together and decided, what if we put on a convention that's just for Blizzard, and got everyone down here with us in Southern California. And ever since then, tens of thousands of people, year after year, since 2005, have come here to share with us. We come for the fantasy of the worlds that we share and love. We come for the friendships that we bond and make here together. BlizzCon is home to some of the most important and special memories of my life. As Josh said, my name is Taryn Gregory, and I'm a cinematic project director. I've been working on World of Warcraft for the last 12 years. I directed the Wrathgate cinematic and Wrath of the Lich King. All the way through a number of other in-game cinematics, and occasionally dabbled in the other properties with Chromie for Heroes of the Storm, Junkrat, and Roadhog for Overwatch.
Yeah.
And the Diablo 3 Demon Hunter reveal in 2010. But the story I'm going to tell you today is how I got to Blizzard, and how if they'd never decided to do BlizzCon, I would not be standing in front of you today. So let's take it back. In 2005, I had just finished my film studies at the University of Washington, film and video production. I was working a day job at a video game company as tech support, you know, as I started to try to get my career online. And I was so lucky to work side by side with my friend Ezra Ferguson. We had grown up together since we were 13. We had moved to the Seattle area together, and we were both working at this video game company together. Having grown up together, we gamed together. All right, we had a long history of Dungeons and Dragons sessions, where we'd pop the Warcraft 2 CD in the audio CD-ROM drive, skip it to track 2, and be rolling our dice, dun 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 dun, you know. It was such a great soundtrack. I love that thing. And Ezra was always playing, you know, the grizzled, old, white-haired warrior with a scar on his eye. It was just his main go-to. We also played all other Blizzard games as we grew up. We also fancied ourselves kind of part-time filmmakers. Growing up, 16 years old, he convinced me to pull a camera out from under my parents' bed, and we started shooting these utterly terrible movies. Just, they were so bad. Kind of in a charming way, but really so bad. But throughout the years, we kept making short films, you know, sketch comedy, really bad ninja films. So we had that in our pocket, and that's ultimately why I ended up studying film at the University of Washington. Well, one day, we've been playing World of Warcraft the entire year, 2004 to 2005. We were just crazy about this game. This is actually my first screenshot right here from the open beta. Teldrassil!
Oh, man.
I'm so
Schinken!
sorry. So we had brought our characters into this game with us. These characters that we had known and loved all throughout our role-playing history. And we jumped right into playing so hard. Well, at work one day, I'm sitting in the office. Ezra comes up to me, just inflamed, just so passionate. Taryn, we've got to make a movie for the Blizzcon movie contest. We've got to make a machinima film. And I go, whoa, 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 dude. 1 second, slow your roll. What's BlizzCon? This was going to be the first BlizzCon. I had never heard of it, right? And he went on to explain, oh, Blizzard is holding a convention in Anaheim, and they have this movie contest where we have to make a machinima movie. I'm like, okay. Now tell me what's machinima. And he explained it's when you make movies using video games. You know, you shoot it in the game. And keep in mind, this is my job now. This is what I do professionally. So my response to Ezra would probably not be what you think. I said, no way. I said, if we're entering a contest with something that I've never even heard about, we're just going to spend a lot of time on this, and we're going to get crushed in the competition. And Ezra looked at me and said, you know what, man? Let's just tell our story. And I was in. You know, I was in. If we're just in it to tell a story, I'm all 100% on board for this. So, we checked the clock. It was September 6th, 2005. The due date for the movie was September 23rd, 2005. We had 17 days to write a movie, to make a movie, to learn how to make the movie.
Oh man.
And the clock was ticking. So, to make our
Ja,
plan,
lol.
we
24 Stunden
divide
rund um die
and
Uhr
conquer.
wahrscheinlich.
Da habt ihr aber viel Kaffee
Ezra
in
would
der
focus on the
Hauptsache.
audio.
Wahrscheinlich.
He focused on the
Alter, die
dialogue.
Ach du Heilige!
Doch, viel Druckhause.
All things sound effects related.
Gottes Willen, alte
I, on the other side,
Schinkendinger.
was tasked with the visuals. Again, here, vanilla screenshot, sweet 4:3 aspect ratio, with our protagonist, Voldegar, who, as I said, it was Ezra's character. It was the grizzled old soldier that he'd been playing since we were 13 years old. We're gonna tell his story. So, being in charge of the cinematic side, I wanted to know, how do I make this game client that we have here work as a movie-making tool? So I looked for some familiar things. One of them was the gnomish spyglass. We ended up using the gnomish spyglass, the actual engineering device that when you right-click on and you scope around, we use this as a lens. And the reason you use those is to make sure that instead of in-game, when you get up close to someone, their nose is all huge, it's all distorted, you want it to actually look more appealing, and you can see kind of what that does when you look through the lens. Next up, the camera in the game client is, of course, attached to your character's head. It's always right here when you zoom in, and you can't change height. But camera height is really important to narrative storytelling. You want to be high angle, low angle, mid angle. And our solution was our cameraman was going to be a druid. The druid allowed us that if we wanted a low angle shot, we just shift cat form. You want a high angle shot, you just shift into druid form, and everything in between. It was a very, very effective tool, and we got shooting right away. Last thing was just the smoothness of the camera, right? And that's that, in general, when you're using the mouse, it can look a little jittery. And so, using our technical support savvy, we actually mapped a dual analog joystick directly into WoW, and we're sitting here with little tiny joysticks and orbiting around the camera to make that work. So it's like gamepad, game movie. It all makes sense, right? And in fact, in this shot from the film, when we're running across the epic Arathi Highlands, we were only running because Voldegar wasn't level 40 yet. If you recall, you had to get to 40 before you got your mount. So we're epically running across the Arathi Highlands. But it was great. It was great. And so we began shooting. And as we shot everything, our friends came to bear, guildmates we'd had in World of Warcraft and before. They helped us as actors. They helped us as voice actors. They helped us in many, many, many ways. Ezra, of course, was the voice of Voldegar himself, the main character. He also sang the introduction song, wrote the introduction song. And I remember so vividly, to get really good sound quality, because when you're recording in an apartment, if you're really loud, you can hear like the reflections off the walls in the apartment. So we actually drove at night to a park. We're in a rural park, and there's houses over there, and you can see the lights are still on. And Ezra's standing on a hill, and he's belting the speech from the end. You know, before you lies the greatest home of man. And I'm just like, the neighbors here are gonna be wondering what these guys are doing out in the park after dark. But it sounded great. It sounded great. I actually learned how to use After Effects during the production of this film. So learning machinima, learning compositing, and built all the army scenes at the end. Just fly by wire, keep it going. Many late nights, a lot of passion, a lot of investment. When the deadline finally came, we wrapped it all up, and we named this movie Return. A return to Stromgard, a return for us. We uploaded this movie, a little 43 megabyte file, to blizzard.com, and went to bed. Woke up the next day and we're like, okay, I think we're done, right? That was a good journey. We did it for ourselves. It was super cool. We were not done. In fact, the next day, this was 2005, the first year that YouTube was introduced, so we didn't even know it was there yet. So we weren't using YouTube. We had uploaded it to our friend's business server. And we woke up the next morning and we got a call. Dude, what did you do? And we had crashed his server. And his business website was offline, and we're like, oh no, what happened? Turned out that pennyarcade.com had linked it on the front page with Gabe going, look at this movie. And it just blew the server out. And so this was already like getting more attention than any film Ezra and I had ever made, and it was starting to become overwhelming. But little did we know, we got an email. We got an email from Blizzard. Congratulations, you're one of the 5 winners of the Blizzcon movie contest. Hard stops. Why is Blizzard talking to us? Oh, did we do something bad? No, it was really good. And we ended up winning. The prize that year being, you know, a sweet graphics card. I don't even remember, like, ancient by today's standard. It was really good then. And, of course, tickets to the first Blizzcon. So we got to come down. We got to come down to this logo, the original BlizzCon logo. In hindsight, there were a lot of people whose careers were just getting started at that first BlizzCon in attendance. Mark Turpin, the creator of Yogscast Empire, the CEO, he was there. We hung out the night before. The first night, I ended up getting a burger with John Bain at In-N-Out. And at the time, I was really excited because In-N-Out burger, yeah! I've never had one before. And I met Jenna, you know, who they weren't married yet. And Jesse Cox, who I didn't meet at the con, but would later be doing voices for our machinima, and he was there too. It's just incredible to think of all these people whose careers were just getting started. We're all in attendance at that first BlizzCon. I honestly didn't know what I was expecting. I've been at other conventions, science fiction, fantasy conventions up in Washington State before, and I kind of figured it was going to be the same, right? You're walking the floor, maybe a couple friends, developers are going to be hiding backstage, you might see them on panel. I was totally wrong. What instead happened was there were Blizzard devs everywhere. You couldn't get away from them. And in fact, this was quoted in the 2014 WoW documentary, but Ezra spotted Chris Metzen and said, dude, come on! He ran up to Chris Metzen, and he said, Chris was like, hey guys, how are you enjoying the con? And Ezra's like, oh dude, we made this movie called Return, and Chris just cut him off. It's like, you made that movie? Oh my god! I couldn't believe that anyone would make a movie about Stromgard. Who knows anything about Stromgard? And we're sitting here going, dude, why is he geeking out on us? We're supposed to be geeking out on him. And everything was upside down. It was just so backwards. But it was so exhilarating and exciting to make these connections with these people we held in such high esteem, at such a high level of respect. But they were just people, you know, geeking out with us, having a good time. We enjoyed the sights of the con floor, you know, played a little bit of a certain StarCraft game on the Xbox. And when things were rolling down, we went to the main hall, which was, there was only 2 halls at BlizzCon 1. And for the closing ceremonies, they played Return on the big screen. And this was such an incredible moment, sitting with thousands of people watching our movie. Oh, it just stole the heart right out of me. I thought I'd reached the most exciting thing that was going to happen. So we left the hall, thinking BlizzCon's over, winding down, went to the Hilton lobby. I guess it's over. When Shane DeBerry, the lead producer of World of Warcraft, comes up, throws his arms around and says, "Hey boys, I just bought your tab. How are you doing tonight?" And the night had just begun. We sat there and we talked and we geeked out more and more and more. Samwise swung by, Joey Ray Hall swung by, my future boss, little did I know. And as Mike said, by the end of the night, it all seemed like these were just friends that we hadn't seen in a while. And it was incredible. But ultimately the sun would come up and it was time to go home. So flying back to Seattle, the next few months were a total blur. We ended up being accepted to a film festival, Return winning Best Off-the-Shelf Machinima, the film festival in 2006. We made the parody music video Billy McClure, which was a lot of fun and won an X-Fire contest. We started to think, maybe there's something here. Maybe we actually can do this professionally. And so we put all of our effort into creating a follow-up to Return that was a Return 2 teaser. And as you can see, we learned a lot. It started looking more significant than the one that, we were learning as we went. And we wanted this teaser to be online before we attended E3 2006 with the intention of getting together with Blizzard at the event and asking them, is there anything we could possibly do to work with you guys? And so we made it to E3 2006 and we met Pierre Bonage. Old school people know who it is. But you might see, I wasn't looking too hot in this photo. Not long after this taken, I fell incredibly ill. I was relegated to our hotel room in Los Angeles with a 104-degree temperature, delusional, and I couldn't speak or move. I've talked about friendship a few times already, and there's a reason. From the beginning of this gambit, I didn't think we could make this movie, but my friend convinced me that we could. There's no version of this movie that would exist without all of my friends helping me out every step of the way. And here at E3 2006, my friend Ezra Ferguson successfully made contact with Blizzard and got us job interviews while I was having fever dreams in the hotel room. I owe my friend more than I can ever express. And when I got my offer letter from Blizzard, I was overjoyed. But Ezra's offer letter never came. Surely there was a mistake. This can't be happening. But as I mentioned earlier, we had divided and conquered, and Blizzard had a role for the video side, but not for the audio at this time. To this day, I'm thankful that we talked through this worst case scenario before it happened. We actually said, dude, there's a chance where only one of us will get hired. I'm glad we did, because we're still really, really strong friends. I see him at least once a year, holiday times. He's made it back to BlizzCon more than a few times. Oh, and he's working at like a AAA game company up in Seattle, so don't worry about him. He's doing great. He's doing great. You might say he's going full steam ahead. Oh. So, anyway, BlizzCon is very, very special. It opened the door for my career at Blizzard. I've directed maybe half a dozen films that have premiered at BlizzCon since that first one in 2005. But at the end of the day, BlizzCon to me is about friendship. Our contest submission was called Return. And every year, I've returned here to BlizzCon. Whether you're here or at home, BlizzCon has brought us together to share in what we love, to make those connections. And please cherish those connections, because you never know when one friend may change your life in ways that you could have never imagined. Thank you.
Yay.
Let's hear it for Taryn. I love that story. And I think it really kind of underscores my point from earlier, right? Like, we all got here through weird, winding, crazy paths. I myself stand before you as a failed actor, so no, it's fine. I'm doing fine. It's fine. But someone else I've got backstage for you, much more successful actor than I think that I could ever hope for, especially when it comes to using his voice and delighting your ears. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce for you the voice of Reinhardt, Darren DePaul.
Oh my god. Gott, Leute. Nicht durchdrehen.
Hi, I'm Darren. I'm an actor. Thank you, person I don't know. Sorry. Thank you. It means a lot. Look, I thank you. Gosh, I got stuff to say. I'm going to be talking for a long time. We'll have love later. That's what my wife says. That's not part of what's on here. I'm so sorry. I'm in so much trouble. Please welcome Darren DePaul. Hi, I'm Darren. Clap, clap. We love you. We love you. Okay, I'm an actor. As you guys know, I did some work in the New York theater. I did some stage and some television. I did some stuff. But as you know, for the last 5 years, I have been a voice in Blizzard games. And we did count them up. There are 53 of them. There's a lot. There's
What
a lot
the
of the
fuck?
characters. That's them. There's one. Sokrathar, he kind of sounds like. There's a warhorse trainer. I don't remember that one.
What the fuck?
You know, that list, that doesn't include like wall sessions when you're in a group session making background noises or like extra characters. That's just them. You guys know Blizzard changed my life. But Blizzard was a big part of my life before Blizzard was a big part of my life. Diablo was my jam. That was it. Diablo was my jam. I would spread it on toast and eat it. That's not a thing. I've been going a long time. I'm very delirious right about now. But no, I said last night, Diablo, I played a lot of Diablo, played a lot of Diablo 2, and I played a really lot of Diablo 3. I have run through Diablo 3, the entire game, as each playable class, both sexes. That was my world. You know, that was my little treat. That was my joy. I loved exploring. You know, Deckard Cain said, stay a while and listen. And I kind of did. So how did I get here to this moment? I guess I'm going to talk about that journey. So it is a story of theater, and it is a story of failure, and how those two came together. And in a very dark time in my life, there was a Blizzard game that spoke to me. So please stay a while and listen. Okay. Having a career in acting is hard. It's hard, it's hard, it's really hard. It's like, okay, I came up with this thing. It's like you're putting a message in a bottle and you're throwing the bottle in the ocean. Now, in that bottle, that message is you. It's your skill, it's your talent, it's everything you have to offer in here and in here. And sometimes, if you're lucky, that bottle is gonna like wash to shore and somebody's gonna find it, read the message, like it, you're gonna get a job. Most of the time, the bottle is gonna just float out to sea forever. The bottle's gonna get lost. The bottle's gonna get swallowed by a big fish, which is sad because I could have acted the fish. I could have acted the hell out of that fish. Okay, when was it? I think it was 2003. 2003, I live in New York, I'm kind of bi-coastal, and I was living in New York and I was having no luck at all. Nobody would hire me. This is what actors go through. You go to auditions and you fail. Finally, I got a job at a children's theater that did musicals. They developed musicals to take on tour very early in the morning to young kids in the tri-state area. The musical that I was doing was about the Wright brothers. It was not good. I remember that, but the thing that I do remember before we get to the
got
bad
an
part
idea.
was I played a lot of parts in it, and one of the parts was a German aviator who was really happy and joyful and to sing a song about going up, up. He wanted to go up in the world all the time. It was a little higher than Reinhardt, but I was like, that's weird. My dad, as you know, my dad was Russian but raised in Germany, so I kind of was always attracted to those Middle European, Eastern European things. All his friends would come, these really fascinating people, and I would always listen to those accents. So I did that. But there was one particular performance that I remember. It didn't go well. The show just wasn't working for whatever reason. And when you're doing this particular children's theater, you're not only in the show, you're putting up the set before the show. You're taking on the set after the show. You're doing the props. You're doing everything. Everything you have to do. It is a job. And I remember pulling the spike marks up after the show. Spike marks are like the tape marks where you want to put a set so you know where to aim it. And I was on my hands and knees and I was pulling the spike marks up, and the creative team was standing like behind me, and they were talking about how the show didn't work, like I wasn't there, like my work had meant nothing. And I was in my 40s at this time. I wasn't a kid. And I remember the musical director, she was kind of walking out, and she turned to me and went, "Goodbye, Darren." And bam, black cloud of depression circling like a cartoon frying pan from Looney Tunes. Ka-tang, like right here. And I didn't want to sink in depression, so where do I go? I went home and played Diablo 2. That was my world. That was my joy. I'd run around loot Galeen. I'd bring things to Lysander. I'd bring things to be identified. Stay a while and listen. That was my thing. Also, during that tragic run of this Wright Brothers musical that I have forgotten the name of because I'm old and very tired, but I got this really cool audition for the Broadway version of the musical Hairspray. And I really, really, really wanted this job. The role was for the utility man, which is the guy in the ensemble that plays all the little parts, and also understudies Edna, the mother of Tracy, and Wilbur, the father of Tracy. I really wanted these roles. For some reason, when I went in the first time, it worked like a dream. I got a callback. I go to the callback, nothing worked. And the entire creative team was there. About 25, 30 people were there, including the director, Jack O'Brien. Jack O'Brien, prolific, fabulous, fabulous Broadway director. I wanted to work with this man. Nothing worked. Nothing landed. I did about 2 scenes, and I remember the casting director said, "Mr. O'Brien, would you like to hear Darren sing?" And he said, "Not necessary." "Thank you, Darren. Goodbye. Not necessary." Those were the 2 things that were in my head. That was going to send me into a depression. So again, where did I go? Diablo 2. I didn't know it. That was my prize. That really dark world with big scary monsters. For some reason, I was a hero there. That was my treat. I just felt that I should give up, but I didn't. Stay a while and listen. And I did, and I got through it. I got through my depression. I got back to work. I got jobs. And here's a couple of them that I got during that time. I think they're going to show some pictures. It was something I did. That was a weird musical. I was an angel. That was the other thing. He's the Riddler on Gotham. Right now, it's Corey. Little Shop of Horrors. I did the tour of Little Shop of Horrors. That was really cool. That was a Grinch on Broadway. I'll tell you about that in a minute. I was Grandpa Who. That was, I really love that show with Gary Beach. What else is that? That's Meryl Streep. I work with Meryl Streep. I got to work with Meryl Streep. That was really weird. And that was Gypsy. There was great stuff. That was Grandpa Who. That's Grandpa Who. That was my Broadway debut that I got in this musical of How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Now, who is the director of that? Jack O'Brien. All those years. And I remember in rehearsal one day, he was like, "I love your work. Where have you been?" I kind of wanted to say playing Diablo. I did not. But, you know, you never know. And I remember that, you know, kind of coming full circle, he said, "We're going to be doing a tour of Hairspray. I'd love you to audition for the father." Not the understudy. I want you to audition for the father. Whoa. I wanted it, I went in, I gave the audition that I wanted to give. It got down to between me and someone else. I didn't get it, but I did what I wanted to do at that first audition. Telling you something, gang, this is the truth. If I had gotten that Broadway job, I would not be standing here. I think I just would have stayed in New York with my wife and we would have had a career like everybody else. You know, a lot of actors in New York, they try to come out to LA and maybe have a career in voiceover and animation, and they'll stay about 5 months. It's done. It's so hard to break in. I don't know the magic, the luck that I have. But I will tell you this. My wonderful wife said, let's try Los Angeles. We can be unemployed anywhere. So we came to Los Angeles. I have a really good agent. I have a bi-coastal agent. They're like, you should take some workshops so you learn the LA rules. You know the New York rules, because I'd done like commercials for Geico and things like that. And she goes, there's this really good workshop you could take with Andrea Toyas, the director and casting director for Blizzard. I'm like, blah, 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 what? No, that's what I want. I was so excited. I couldn't wait for the class. It was just everything. I was living for it. And then the night before, I got a terrible sinus infection. It's a weird reaction. It's gonna be a happy story. Don't worry, I'm standing here. I got a sinus infection and nothing happened. Good night. No, that's not what happened. It's not. So I got this sinus infection and I overslept. I thought the workshop was at 11. I thought it was at 1, it was at 11. So at about 10, my wife was like, you should really get out of bed. Don't you have a workshop? I'm like, no, I don't have a... I got ready, I got in the car, I got to the workshop. Andrea Toya, she's brilliant, a brilliant, brilliant director. She gave a great presentation and she's like, okay, she kind of said the magic phrase, what we're doing now is our latest expansion. It's called Warlords of Draenor, and we're looking for some orcs. So today we're going to be working on orc voices. And I'm like, I was in Little Shop of Horrors. I understudied the plant. I can do orc voices. So I go in, and I started doing this to the material. And she's like, who are you? You look like an accountant. But you do that, and you have theater training, and you have a good agent, and you got this weird range, you can do a lot of characters. We can use you. The words I have been waiting for in like 30 years of acting. We can use you in the company that, at the darkest point of my life, that was my joy. It meant the world to me. I threw a bottle in the ocean, and she found it, and she opened it, and she liked the message, and it wasn't swallowed by a fish. Take that, fish from earlier in my story. I don't know. So we found out that I have done a voice in every Blizzard franchise, except Diablo, because life is weird. I'm not in Diablo. But they said, we can use you. And that led to Reinhardt. So, spoiler alert, this is the good part of the talk. I wanted to leave you with a story about Reinhardt and how I got that thing and all that stuff. So, I had auditioned for a lot of Blizzard characters. Some I got, some I didn't. You saw the thing go by real quick, soccer throw. And so this audition came from my agent, and it was a Blizzard game, but you only get about 6 lines to tone. You know, well, this line will show that tone, this line will show that tone. And it had a code name, so I thought it was a Warcraft expansion. I didn't know what it was. I did a pass, and I sent it to my agent, and I didn't hear for a couple weeks. Then they called back and they went, oh, they really liked what you did. It was kind of gritty, maybe, you know, threw a bottle in the ocean, tried to make it happen. They went, okay, it's between you and somebody else. Can you do another pass? Remember, what we're thinking for this character, he's a big guy. He's got a lust for life. Everyone wants to hear his stories. He's a valiant warrior. So I did something that I have never done before and that I probably will never do again. I wanted that job. So I took those 6 lines that they gave and I wrote a monologue tying them all together. That was my audition. I wanted to show them that I could live that character. And as you see, I got it, but I knew that I would either get it or I'd never work for Blizzard again because I hadn't honored the writing. Someone worked really hard on that writing. You don't want to go into an audition and start improving. You're not going to go in for Hamlet and be, to be or not to be? That is the question. But the real question is about the parking in the Anaheim Convention Center. It's not what you do. Talk about a sea of troubles. That's not what you do. Don't do. But somehow, miraculously, Andrea Troyes and her team, they saw the character. They saw him. And I got it. They let me bring him to life through that crazy chance of an audition. And no one has heard it except them and the team. I'm going to do it now. Wilhelm Reinhardt, at your service. I am the protector of the weak, defender of the defenseless, and champion of all causes good and just. I am a champion. Sit, come. I will tell you my story. Rolf, we need a beer. Huh? Sehr good, sehr good. So, I was once a knight in Overwatch. You know what this is, huh? Overwatch. I was sworn sword of Germany. Now, I am a protector of the forgotten, defender of those in need. If this is your cause, then Wilhelm Reinhardt is your man. There's no point in standing around prattling. Come on, have a beer. You've had nothing yet, my friend. Rolf, my friend needs a beer. So, you have an enemy you need defeated, eh? Yes, I will do this. I will make my hammer count. I will be your shield. Where are you? Are you afraid of an old man like me? Ah, there you are!
Okay.
My friend, the enemy has been defeated, and I have a wonderful story. Rolf, we need a beer! So...
Heiliger.
Ja.
So here we are, guys. It's bottles in the ocean, and you're looking for a friendly shore. You're searching to be found and opened. If I have any advice for people that want to do what I do, it is this. Acting and doing voiceover. It's not about the funny voice. It's about bringing everything in here. It's about bringing everything in here. It's about bringing everything in here to that role. It's taking the writing. It's lifting it off the page. It's bringing that character to life. It's playing the character, not judging the character. It's listening. When I did Little Shop of Horrors, Jerry Sachs, the wonderful director, he came up to me one day, and again, brilliant, prolific Broadway director that I was privileged to work with. And he's like, my darling, you want to know the secret of acting? Listening. And don't pause when you're going to tell a joke. They'll know something's coming. Surprise them. And remember to listen. Remember to listen. So guys, maybe, yeah, I'm going to cry. Maybe, just maybe, my journey to right now started at the worst point in my career when I was going to give up, and yet a voice in a Blizzard game that I loved said, stay a while and listen. Thank you for listening.
Ja.
This guy. Hey, stop. I'm fine. Sit down. This isn't for me. But really, right? So we were doing, remember how earlier I said I was a failed actor? I was in college for acting once upon a time, and in the summer of 2007, I was a master carpenter at the Dorset Theater Festival in Dorset, Vermont, and I worked on a production of Peter Pan with a woman named Jan Newberger, who that Christmas went to become his grandma Who. So like our lives were already running parallel 10 years ago before I ever met the guy. I've got one last storyteller for you, and I'm super excited about it because he is none other than the game director for World of Warcraft, Ian Hazzikostas.
Nein!
Erzählt der seine Story?
Du hast schon genug geredet!
Oh mein Gott!
Du hast angefangen, ja, mich aufzulachen.
Es war so schön, weil er jetzt die ganze Zeit nicht zu sehen war.
I think it's probably too late to back out now. Crap. Okay, so BlizzCon. This is my 11th BlizzCon. 10 years ago, my second BlizzCon, 2008, I had just started at Blizzard and was just soaking in the sights from a new vantage point. 11 years ago, I was at my very first BlizzCon, and I had just flown out here to California for the second time in my life, and was enjoying this magical world away from home, and thinking and getting ready, and honestly kind of dreading returning to my life on the East Coast, where I worked at a law firm as a lawyer. And yet, 1 year later,
Das erklärt, warum du dich so herausreden kannst aus allem.
Weil er als Anwalt genau, Lawyer.
Das erklärt alles. Weiß ich ja, wen ich nicht fragen wollte.
Der kann reden, ey. Das ist ein netter, freundlicher Mensch, ey. Der war auch Jura studiert.
And so she, got one of the machines.
Da magst du richtig Leute, die reden können, ne?
Games were something that
So wie so ein 90er-Jahre-Film. Jeder hat Jura studiert. Das ist immer
I
irgendjemand da drin.
Studying them, analyzing them. At the same time, they transported me to another world. I could look at then primitive graphics at lines and squares and a few pixels.
Warcraft wäre ohne dich besser,
an adventure delving through a dungeon.
Ich dachte, jetzt kommt vielleicht Mr. Morhain und erzählt mal ein Schlauer seiner Jugend.
Oder irgendwas anderes.
Along with books, along with movies, along with
Das ist der Grund, warum die mir ständig vorschicken, wenn die Kracke am Dach ist, brauchen die rausredet. Aus Sachen, die sie verkackt haben.
That was always a certain bent to the way my mind worked.
Vielleicht sollte er in die Rechtsabteilung wechseln.
In my early teens, I think probably 12, 13 years old, on a summer vacation, I stumbled across a John Grisham book, one of the early books. He's written like 90 since then. And it was this book called The Firm, turned into a movie with Tom Cruise. And I just like, okay, sure, looks interesting. Started reading it. And actually weirdly opened my mind, got me thinking, I want to be a lawyer when I grow up. Wasn't the embezzling for the mob and all of that. It was the first part of the book. It was watching him go through, reading about him going through graduating from law school, going through the paces at a law firm before it revealed itself to actually be a front for embezzling for the mob. And I was like, that actually sounds pretty interesting. I want to learn more about this. So I talked to family, friends, and continued to read up. And the more I learned, the more I liked. And so I told myself, like at the age of 13, I want to be a lawyer when I grow up. And that shaped a lot of the decisions that I made in the years to follow. I took classes along those lines. When I went to college, I majored in like a general, humanities thing, took legal classes where I could, applied right to law school, got into law school. And so there I was standing in 2001. I grew up in New York. I was right back at home at New York University, starting law school just over, 17 years ago. And life was pretty good. Like I was in the weird position of I had set a goal when I was basically a kid. And there I was 22 years old, and I had achieved what I set out to do. And I loved law school, actually. I was one of those weird people who loved every moment, every year of it. It was analysis. It was looking at questions from multiple angles. The thing that really captivated me was it was solving a problem. It was given a set of constraints, given a set of facts. Let me look at laws and interpretations of those laws. here's the challenge. What's the best argument you can make in support of this position given these things? But not just, doesn't count just to make the argument or to have it in your head. You have to be able to articulate it. You have to be able to convince someone else who may not believe you, who may be skeptical. And it was that combination of problem solving, reasoning, and persuasion that hooked me from the start. But I still love games. I still played tons of games. That was still definitely my go-to pastime. Played lots of Blizzard games. Played Warcraft 2, Warcraft 3, Diablo, Diablo 2, etc. RPGs when I could get my hands on them. Console, just you name it. Just about everything. But my life was on a steady path. I had followed, I was aiming towards this goal and continuing to pursue it. So in 2004, I graduated from law school and took the bar exam, passed the bar exam, moved down to Washington, D.C. to begin my life as a real adult, or so I imagined. I had an awesome job working for a judge as a clerk in the USDC Circuit Court of Appeals, and it was an amazing job. Again, life was good. And yet, not 4 years later, I would find myself walking through the gates of Blizzard Entertainment to begin an entirely new life as a game designer. So what happened in between? Well, in November of 2004, there's this little game that came out called World of Warcraft. At the time, it actually hadn't really been on my radar. Obviously, I knew Blizzard games, I love Blizzard games, I had heard that WoW was going to be a thing, but I had just graduated from law school, taken bar exam, moved, packed up, started a new job, and so it wasn't something I was like actively following. I didn't play the data. But a friend of mine that I'd met online playing other games, I played MUDs and whatever else I can get my hands on in past years, reached out to me and said, hey man, are you going to check out World of Warcraft? And I was like, oh, okay, I guess this is coming out soon. I've kind of settled into my new job. I kind of know my new routine. I have some free time. Let me check it out. And I asked him what I should play. I kind of wanted to play a warrior. He's like, no, man, warriors got really badly nerfed in the beta. You don't want to play a warrior. And so I was like, okay, you're the expert. I don't know. So I picked a different class in my mind. I wanted to be a tank. I initially looked at Paladin and figured, okay, I'll be like a hybrid tank who has some magical abilities. But then my friend actually was going Horde, so I was like, okay, I can't be a Horde Paladin. What should I be? Let me pick Shaman. I mean, that looks like a hybrid tank class. They have some things that will specialize in increasing their shield block and increasing their armor and parry. And that's like a tank tree, right? I was not very smart back then. But I jumped into this world, and it captivated me from the start. I think World of Warcraft came out, I want to say it was, Thanksgiving weekend in 2004. I remember, I think I had the last day off before the long weekend, off from work, and I was looking forward to settling in, playing for a long stretch, really getting to know this new game. Of course, my server was down and unavailable for the first 2 days, so that didn't work out so well. But I stuck it out. When the server stabilized, I got back in, and really, for the next month, especially with the holidays coming up, I had a lot of free time, and I sunk a ton of it into World of Warcraft. And I loved the game. It was immediately obvious. It was like no other game I'd ever played. It was this massive world that I just reveled in exploring and just trying to understand. It seemed like I could never understand it all, like I could never explore it all. And now things continued. A couple months passed, and my guild, I had hit max level. My guild began to talk about taking tentative steps into Molten Core, trying out our very first raid. This was early 2005, like late January, early February 2005, when really that wasn't something that many guilds at all were doing. None of us, there was no information to draw upon. We had no clue what we were doing. We went in, we got absolutely slaughtered. I was basically a nobody in the raid. I think I was stuck in group 8, and I didn't have a priest in my group. And back then, priests, you could only see people with the default UI, and even some add-ons that were available, you could only see people in your own party to target them and dispel them. So we got to Lucifron. I had the magic debuff on me. There was no one who could target me to dispel me. I died. Every time we tried, I died really quickly. I was like, okay. But it was super fun. And we went back, got back on the horse, tried again, a few days later. And this time, I happened to notice something. We were looking at, we had wiped a few times there were these mobs called Ancient Corehounds, for those of you who remember Molten Core back in the day. And they would respawn, and often they would just catch us by surprise, and we would wipe, and we would lose, and that was it, and we had to run back from the start, and then creatures would respawn around us. I realized, hey, these things are respawning, like, on a pretty fixed cadence. And for whatever reason, I happened to have a physical stopwatch on my desk, like an old athletic track timer. And I started timing Corehound respawns. And I would tell the group, I spoke up tentatively on Ventrilo, no one really knew who I was too well, and told them, all right, it's safe to move, wait a minute, stay here for 3 minutes, Corehound coming. And over the course of the night, we actually made it back to Lucifron, killed Lucifron, and would continue exploring onto Gehennis and beyond. And I realized, even within a couple of days, I had basically just become the de facto raid leader. I went from the person that I was stuck in the healerless group dying over and over again to there are 39 other people moving forward when I say to move forward and staying when I say to stay. And it was just a question of someone stepping up and taking charge, taking responsibility for something that needed to be done. And from that moment on, that really shaped the course of what World of Warcraft meant to me in the years to follow. So I was raid leader, eventually became the guild leader as we continued in our success through Molten Core, Blackwing Lair, and beyond. Now, 1 year later, we were in Ankh-Uraj, and we were fighting the Twin Emperors. We were stuck on this raid boss, and I thought I found a bug. I was like, there's something weird happening here that shouldn't be happening. What do I do about it? The problem was back in the day, we didn't actually share anything about raid progression. There's this culture inherited from EverQuest that had come before World of Warcraft, where everything was a treasured secret to be guarded, never to be shared, never to be discussed with others. And so I couldn't just go on the Raid and Dungeon forum and say, hey, we're doing this strat for Twin Emperors and we keep running into this issue. Is anyone else seeing this? Is this a bug? But I still wanted to get some, assistance. What could I do? So I happened to remember that one of the lead developers in World of Warcraft at the time had previously played another MMO called EverQuest, which I just alluded to. And so I maybe kind of stalked him. I went to an old guild forum site where I knew he had posted years and years ago. I found his forum handle there, and I registered an account and sent him a private message saying, hi, I'm a World of Warcraft player, and I think I found a bug. And I explained our situation with Twin Emperors. And he quickly and graciously responded, much to my amazement, and actually gave me his personal email address to get in touch with him in the future. Said, yeah, we'll look into it. Thank you very much for the report. And don't hesitate to reach out if you have any other thoughts or concerns you want to share. That guy's name, Jeff Kaplan. So then lead designer in World of Warcraft. And so I very rarely took him up on that offer because I was always very concerned that I was imposing, that I was taking up his valuable time. But over the following months, I would send in bug reports and feedback. When we got to a new boss, I would let him know what my guild thought of it, what we found very challenging, what we didn't. And he always graciously responded. I think to this day, whenever fans reach out to me by different means on the internet, whether it's Twitter or whatever, I always do my best to try to respond because I know how much that meant to me when I was in their shoes back then. It was unbelievable, it was mind-blowing to have the lead developer of this game that I idolized, that I was spending so much of my time on, actually pay attention and respond directly. Now, things moved on, and in the meantime, my guild site, because we were also continuing to be relatively successful as a raid guild, we actually gathered a little bit of a following, and the site became the host to a lot of high-end discussion around the folks in the community. High-end theory crafters would come, people from other raid guilds. We began to chip away a little bit around this culture of secrecy, and actually get some of it out in the open as people discussed some of the best ways to play their classes, approaches you might take to raid bosses, and more. And through that, I also got in touch with some other folks who worked at Blizzard, other folks in the game industry who just happened to play World of Warcraft. For those of you back in the day who remember using the Elitist Jerks forums, those would be the forums. And so, time continued. Burning Crusade came out. I had still, was still ardent, enthusiastic, passionate WoW player. I'd taken a little break a couple of times here or there. Just some raid burnout, herding cats, and keeping 40 people together could be a challenge. But I always came back because it was just this magical, captivating game. In the meantime, in the rest of my life, I was kind of a lawyer by day, raid leader by night, living this completely separate double life, and no one at work really talked much about gaming, or I think understood what I did with a lot of my free time. And similarly, the people who were talking to my online identity knew nothing about the person behind that. In the meantime, I wasn't quite as happy with how my legal job was going as I had once been. I still loved the philosophy behind it. I still loved the underpinnings, the problem solving, the theory. But in practice, the same device that was giving me so much fun at home was actually kind of torturous. That is the computer. Like 20, 30 years ago, when you're involved in litigation, it's a standard thing. You have what's called discovery, where you can ask the other party in the suit to turn over any documents in their possession that relate to the subject matter in question. 20, 30 years ago, that was like, here's a couple of boxes with a few folders and these files in them. Enjoy. Today, or back in 2007, that was, here are 1.4 gigabytes of responsive emails from our Outlook database. Enjoy. And guess who gets to enjoy that? It's a lot of the lawyers who go through looking for privileged information, trying to understand what was turned over or what might yet be turned over. And that's what a lot of the job wasn't solving puzzles, it was finding the puzzle pieces and fishing them out of a big bin so that I could solve the puzzle. And I started to think along other lines. I started to think about, what else could I do? And along the way, one of my guildmates, a guy named Owen, had the same person, in fact, who recommended that I not play a warrior back in 2004, had gotten hired at Blizzard. He'd been a programmer, and he was now working on the WoW team, and was telling me nothing but amazing things about what it was like to work at Blizzard. And that started wheels turning in my head a little bit. I started to think, what if? I knew a couple of folks at Blizzard. I had actually met Jeff in person when I came out here for Blizzcon in 2007, for my very first Blizzcon. And I talked to my friend Owen and proceeded to apply for a position. And I wrote what was probably the world's most ill-advised cover letter ever, in which I said, I don't know that I want this job, but I'm really curious. Because I was actually really just felt bad. I didn't want my friend Owen to put himself out for me. And then I genuinely still felt in my mind, I'm like, I've grown up my whole life as a lawyer. This is crazy. I'm not going to switch careers. I'm not going to switch professions. But it was still this compelling, tempting thing that I couldn't say no to.
Crazy.
And so I sent in my resume. I heard back. They sent me a lengthy design test where I spent an entire weekend filling out a long questionnaire, writing answers to things like how would you change the 4 horseman encounter from a 40-player encounter to a 25-player encounter, or what new abilities would you design for a class and why. Sent that back in. Next thing I knew, I got flown out for an interview. That was a magical day. That was just sitting down for a day talking to my idols about this game that I loved. Didn't even feel like a job interview. A month after that, I heard back from Blizzard with an offer, and suddenly the whole thing became very, very real in a hurry. I had a very awkward conversation with my parents, who had no idea what World of Warcraft was, and told them, hi, so I'm thinking about taking this job on the West Coast. What kind of job is it? Well, it's for a game company. Oh, are you gonna be like doing legal stuff for them? No. They thought I was crazy, kind of justifiably so. But what it came down to was, I looked at that opportunity. I knew that it was a once-in-a-lifetime thing. I knew that I was incredibly lucky. There was a series of ridiculous serendipitous circumstances that had piled one on top of another to lead me to the moment where I could go from being a player of a game to having a chance to help shape its future. And I knew that if I said no, that opportunity was never going to come up again. And I knew that if I said no, one day, maybe a week later, maybe a year later, maybe 5 years later, I would wake up, or I'd come home after a rough day at work, and I'd wonder to myself, what if? I would feel regret. And so I said, what the hell? And I said yes, flew across the country. I told myself I would give it 1 year to see if I was any good at it, if they liked me, if I liked them. And that was just over 10 years ago. And it's been an amazing journey. And here I am at my 11th BlizzCon. And life is bizarre. Yes. And life is amazing. And BlizzCon is amazing. So thank you so much for staying a while and listening. Enjoy the remainder of BlizzCon. It's been a pleasure.
Zu Ende.
Good job, sir. Have a good one. Thank you all. It's my distinct pleasure to be able to help these storytellers tell their stories. So glad we got to do this again next year. Geek and Sundry's up next. Have a great rest of your BlizzCon and stay safe and classy. Thanks, everyone.
Ooh, yeah.